Hello, my name is Gurpreet Dillon, and I'm a professor of information security at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. One of the issues that often comes to haunt us in this interconnected world is that of internet privacy. Call it internet privacy, call it information privacy, call it cyber privacy, they all kind of mean the same thing. In the corporate world, one aspect that has troubled people an awful lot is about cyber terrorism and cyber stalking. Both cyber terrorism, cyber stalking kind of are interrelated, and many a times people stalk, infringe personal privacies, and then they terrorize people. But cyber terrorism, of course, figures out very top in the list. A study that was done in 2015, close to 45% of Americans felt that they were scared of some kind of a cyber attack taking place. Second to that is of corporates tracking individuals and personal information. That is a big privacy issue. So every time we go online to purchase something or transact business with any institution, may it be a private sector organization or a government entity, people are scared generally that their personal information is going to be used or abused, or somehow it's going to get into wrong hands. And third aspect, which has been troubling people, is more specific to the government and how states and enterprises associated with the federal government are tracking information, personal information, for whatever gain it might be. This fear came up more so after the revelations of the PRISM scenarios that we witnessed following Snowden's, coming out with all sorts of details as to how governments were collecting personally identifiable information, or even perhaps snooping onto private networks. To some extent, one can understand why states would engage in this kind of behavior. Obviously, we want to control any kind of terrorist attacks from taking place in the US, or for that matter, any kind of an extremist expressing their views, although there is freedom of speech, but we do not want individuals or groups of individuals to unnecessarily burden the society with false propaganda or propaganda of the type which alienates the society as such. But underlying all these is this whole notion of privacy, how we fear about our privacy, what are the things that we consider to be very, very private. Now, depends upon people you talk to. What may be very private to me may not be private to other people. So hence, it's important to understand how do we differentiate between public information and private information, and what we consider to be ours. And that kind of lays the groundwork for what we might call rightly so a good private secure organization and enterprise and a society. In some research that we did, we found fear-based actions that individuals take to be really surprising to a large extent. When we look at the fear associated with loss of privacy and kind of things that people do, in the first instance, our study found that people start identifying candidates in elections, and they vote for specific individuals because of their innate fears about losing privacy in some scheme of things. The second fear that people have with respect to privacy, they generally go out and purchase a gun. So there's a big fear of the government that has a strong relationship with buying guns. There are a lot of studies that have been done out there, in particularly through the criminologists and some sociologist colleagues, which have directly correlated gun buying behavior with fears that individuals might have. And it's not just loss of privacy, there are other kinds of fears that people have, and those may generally relate to criminal acts becoming more prevalent, and things like loss of privacy or some infringement that they might have experienced. So people go out and purchase guns. People who have purchased a gun because of the fear have generally a high level of fear of technology and a crime of some sorts. Thirdly, we've also seen that there's a greater incidence of purchasing home alarm systems as a consequence of loss of privacy. So the gadgetry that goes with home alarm systems saw actually close to a 23-24% increase among people who had an average fear of a crime being reported, and they have purchased some kind of an alarm system of sorts. Now, are these fears real or not? That's we don't know. They are just based on perceptions of people of what the fear is and actions that they have taken. Another interesting factoid that has gone with fears and the action that people have, may it be with relation to privacy or something else, is people sending their children, at least those who can afford, to private schools. About 8% of such people have been found to have sent kids to private schools because of fears of technology, because of man-made disasters, and or for simply personal anxieties that they may have. So it's interesting to see how people react to fears about privacy and that kind of actions that they take generally in a society. It was very recently reported that Microsoft has actually given a thumbs up to the new Privacy Shield agreement that will let many of the US firms import and use personal data, which may include emails, files, etc., of European Union citizens. This is actually very interesting to see how state enterprises, the European Union, the US government, and some private enterprises come together to think about certain solutions for privacy issues that trouble many people. This agreement makes Microsoft perhaps the first big company to throw its weight behind this particular pact. It hasn't been launched as yet, but negotiations between the European Union and US have been completed. The European Commission, of course, hasn't yet issued any adequacy decision that will set this whole agreement into motion. The agreement's predecessor, Safe Harbor, which was struck down because US surveillance program meant that it did not offer adequate privacy protection to the Europeans, that came under the gun for the last year or two. The US has obviously taken a different stance as far as this is concerned. But now the EU privacy regulators are due to give their opinion on this new deal, and hopefully they will approve it. They can't technically stop the Commission issuing any kind of an adequacy decision, but they can make life very difficult if they want to for companies that transfer data if they think the US doesn't offer adequate protection, which means any given company may actually transfer data from US and keep it somewhere else. Microsoft, on the other hand, thinks that this is a great step in the right direction. There are many such trans-border data flow issues. They're not new. They've been around for a very long time, ever since the days of electronic data interchanges when we really started doing this. How do you transfer data from one national state to another, and how do you manage protection of data when it leaves one particular legal boundary and enters into another is an issue which has confounded and has troubled a lot of legislators over a period of time. Now, it's just time will tell us if this particular agreement between the US and EU and with Microsoft in the fold is going to play out in a certain way or not. We don't know. But clearly it is a step in the right direction, and we hope that other agreements of this sort, where there is some understanding, some common understanding of what privacy is and what it matters and how it matters, is very, very important. Unfortunately, many at times we don't even know, we don't even understand what privacy might be. Aspects about cyber privacy take me to this very fundamental issue that needs to be addressed and thought through when we are implementing any kind of a cybersecurity policy. And that is any policy, and this I've always argued for this, cannot be implemented in a vacuum. One has to be absolutely cognizant of all the stakeholders, thinking through as to why they're doing what they're doing and how they should be really consider aspects which may relate to privacy, which may relate to culture, ethics, and so on and so forth, and how they impact the implementation of a given policy. Because clearly, creating a policy is easy, but implementing it and getting it institutionalized in an organization is the tough bit. So today we've discussed some aspects about privacy, some legislative aspects which need to be considered, certain organizational issues that need to be thought about, some individual preferences that there might be, and how these three elements at least come together to shape the formulation and subsequently the implementation of a cybersecurity policy. It's important to understand, it's important to classify this privacy issues. In my classification, I simply classify them into legislative, organizational, and individual. But I'm sure there are other ways of looking into privacy issues. But it's important to classify first in order to come to grips with what is at stake here and how we can understand and take this understanding in the implementation of a cybersecurity policy in the real world.